Good evening, everybody. My name is E.R. Anderson. I'm the executive director of Charis Circle. Charis Circle is the nonprofit programming arm of Charis Books, and Charis Books is the South's oldest independent feminist bookstore. We are delighted to be here tonight to celebrate Red Lip Theology with the one and only Candice Marie Benbow. This is her debut. It is her launch event, and she is here with Tamara Winfrey Harris. We are joined by the Auburn Avenue Research Library on African American culture and history to help us celebrate this launch. They will be dropping additional information in the chat. So thank you to our research librarian friends for helping us celebrate this book tonight. Candice Marie Benbow is a theologian, an essayist, a columnist, a baker, and educator whose work gives voice to Black women's shared experiences of faith, healing, and wholeness. Named by Sojourners as one of 10 Christian women shaping the church in 2020, she has written for Essence, Glamour, The Root, Vice, Shondaland, Madame Noir, and the Me Too movement. Candice created the Lemonade Syllabus social media campaign, founded the media boutique Zion Hill Media Group, and, in memory of her mother, established the Louise Marie Foundation to support HBCU nursing students and community mental health projects. A member of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority, Inc., Candice holds degrees from Tennessee State University, North Carolina Central University, and Duke Divinity School. So welcome, Candice. We are so happy to be here with you. And we are joined tonight by Tamara Winfrey Harris, whose writing on race and gender has appeared in the New York Times, The Atlantic, New York Magazine, Los Angeles Times, Bitch, and other media. She's the author of the award-winning book, The Sisters Are All Right, Changing the Broken Narrative of Black Women in America, and Dear Black Girl, Letters from Your Sisters on Stepping into Your Power. So welcome, Tamara. I want to welcome everybody watching at home. We know so many of y'all are longtime fans, friends, family of Candice's, so we want you to be loud in the chat. Tell us how you know Candice, and please put your questions for Candice.
PG version.
There you go. PG, yeah. Say what you need to say.
Right.
No holds barred. And put your questions in the Ask a Question box at the bottom center of the screen. Tamara will begin incorporating those later. But we're really just delighted to be here. It's always an honor to get to celebrate someone's book on the first night it comes out. It's a really big deal. Candice, you have given so much to so many communities. So we just want to honor you tonight and celebrate your great success. So welcome to Charis. Welcome, everybody. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. Soror. Congratulations. Yes. Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you.
I am so excited to be here with you today. One, to find out you're also a member of Alpha Kappa Alpha, and anyone who goes to Tennessee State University, which I have a family legacy there. My daddy went there, my brother went there, my sister-in-law went there. You see, I knew you were cool peeps. I mean, just from reading your
family.
Right. We practically sisters.
Yes.
So my first question for you, because you get into a lot of critique of the Black church in your book. So we're going to get into a lot of critique this evening. But my first question is, what does the Black church move like at its best, both for you personally and more broadly? What does it look like at its best?
At its best, it is a space of flourishing. It's so funny because the image that came to mind when you said, what is the Black church at its best? The image that came to my mind was my grandma ushering my uncles in church, my cousins running around, we downstairs, they're getting ready for a church anniversary. So you got the smell of fried chicken and green beans and pound cake and red church punch while you're hearing the drums and a Hammond organ upstairs and folks shouting. Because at its best, it's community. It's our social strivings. I think at its best, It allows itself to be held accountable so that we all can be free. I think for me as a little girl and I would not be where I am as an orator, as a speaker, as a writer, had I not found my voice in church and been supported by folks in church. Hey Tony! Oh my God! All my people are in here. I'm so excited. But had I not had people who saw something in me, so at its best, the church sees us and it sees our potential and it does what it needs to do in order to be what we need it to be so that we all can thrive. I think that's what it looks like at its best.
That's a beautiful, like I can feel that, the family, the community, the history, the tradition, our rituals. But then you also said in the book, this was a quote, that there were two events that, quote, revolutionized the way you understand the church's role in the oppression of Black women. Can you talk about those events? Or I understand you might want to read a little from the book.
Yeah, can I?
Please do.
Okay, so I'm actually going to read that passage that talks about those two events. So this is from the introduction. That same year, 2012, two events, the death of Whitney Houston and the Black church's response to the killing of Rekia Boyd, would forever revolutionize how I understood religion's role in the oppression of Black women and my religious institution's complicity in it. Whitney's death rocked me to the core. While I'd never met her, I felt like I knew her. To me, she was the ultimate church girl. Publicly, she embodied everything we're told we should be: beautiful, chaste, and poised. Privately, she wrestled with the demons that come along with trying desperately to live up to those false standards of holiness and purity. When her private struggles became public, church folks turned their backs away and noses up in disgust. They love to say, "I'm praying for you, and we'll be here to help you get well," in one breath, and in the next, they're telling everybody who will listen what you did, when you did it, and how you knew better and ought to be ashamed of yourself. When Whitney died, I lost faith in the possibility we could outgrow the church's hold. The realist in me began to concede that if we didn't prematurely die, we'd spend the rest of our lives trying to unlearn and outrun what the church did to us. It felt too late for me. I'd spent my formative years in the church and the damage had already been done. But it wasn't too late for the generations of Black girls who were coming behind me. They deserve a faith free from the pressure of a perfection impossible to obtain. Whitney died February 11, 2012. The day after her funeral, I drafted my personal essay for my MDiv application for admission the upcoming fall. On Sunday, March 25th, 2012, Black male preachers across the country stood behind the sacred desk to preach the word of God while wearing hoodies. In solidarity, Hoodie Sunday was a Black Christian response to the murder of 17-year-old Trayvon Martin the month before. For many younger millennials and members of Generation Z, Trayvon's death was the wake-up call and entrance into activism. The Sanford, Florida Police Department's hesitance to arrest Trayvon's killer made it clear not much had changed. It was in such a charged and emotional moment that Alicia Garza, Patrisse Cullors, and Opal Tometi coined the statement and hashtag Black Lives Matter, which later became a global movement for change. These pastors scheduled several conference calls in the weeks leading up to Hoodie Sunday to ensure everyone was on board with the messaging. It was important that congregations across the country understood what happened to Trayvon and how the police's refusal to relentlessly pursue justice left our Black boys vulnerable. Hoodie Sunday was one of the most powerful Black church moments in modern history. When it came to fighting justice and equal protection under the law, the service showed the Black church had not lost its way. Yet, on March 21st, 2012, just a few days before Hoodie Sunday, Rekia Boyd was murdered by an off-duty police officer in Chicago, and no intention was made to speak her name alongside Trayvon's at the coordinated services. In fact, many pastors did not mention her at all. When pressed about this on social media, some pastors deflected and claimed they mentioned her in their sermons or were leaving it up to their respective youth and women's ministries to honor her. The omission of Rekia from any institutionalized moment reinforced Black churches' refusal to see the conditions and experiences of Black girls and women as the same as those of Black boys and men. I watched the murders of Black boys and men command national, even global attention, while the deaths of Black girls and women were dismissed as unfortunate but avoidable. Hoodie Sunday and the Black church's collective silence about Rekia, and insert the name of any other Black girl or woman who has been a victim of state or intimate partner or sexual violence here, drove home the point I and other sisters should never forget. If we are killed, the church won't care.
Am I back?
I think you are. Yes.
That is so. There are so many passages like that had me shouting, like, yes, yes. Because sometimes it seems like, Black women as a collective love the Black church. We give our souls and sweat and our tears and our time and our treasure, but it doesn't always feel like the Black church loves us back in the way that we deserve to be loved. And in your book, you suggest a theology that you have discovered and discovered is right for you, which is Red Lip Theology. And I wonder if you can tell, what is Red Lip Theology? I got my red lips on. What is Red Lip Theology?
So for me, Red Lip Theology was a way and has been a way that I was able to lean into what it means to embrace all parts of me, right? Like, I grew up in this space that suggests that in order to be a Christian, a Black Christian woman, you have to present a certain way. And when I got to, even before I got to college, before I got to seminary, I talk a little bit about in the book about how I was introduced to womanist theology, but really didn't understand it when I was younger. But then when I got to seminary, I was introduced to it in a way that it really allowed for me to understand that there's an entire theological discourse that really articulates Black women's faith experiences. And that's good. Mm-hmm. And I also felt like I was missing from that conversation. Like, where are the conversations about womanist theology for sisters who were equally raised in the church as they were influenced by hip hop culture, right? Who are not necessarily still about the do as I say, not as I do, and who have long abandoned what goes on in this house, happens in this house, stays in this house. Like, that we have embraced all the ways that Black feminism has given us our voice. We have experienced so many of the movements and the advancements, and we've applied that to faith. And I also felt like, where is that? Where's the space for me to also say I am as critical a thinker as it relates to faith as I am as it relates to culture, as it relates to music, and I ironically, and I talk about it in the book, naming myself as a Red Lip Theologian came from a very petty moment where I had to deal with a white classmate who had gotten on my nerves. But as soon as I said it to like be dismissive of him. Mm-hmm. But as soon as I said it, I was like, no, that is me. Like, I am as righteous as I'm ratchet, and I'm human, and I don't feel like I have to clean up parts of me in order to take up space. Like, God loves me as I am because God created me as I am. God knows I'm a mess at times, and God knows I can do the most. And so it really was this way that I felt like, what would it look like to have the conversations about faith from a Black woman's millennial perspective, a millennial Black woman's perspective that encompasses all of us. And that really was where Red Lip Theology came from. Like, it's the lens that I see myself through. It's the lens that I see the world through. And how I really think that God shows up concerning me.
So you all, this book, which you can get right down there, click. There are just as many, there are like all these righteous moments, but there are also lots of great petty moments like that one. I like so wanted to be there at the table with you, like with some popcorn to see his face. So I wanted to know, and Sis Stay Reading also asked in the Q&A. So you've got this great subtitle, right? This Ntozake Shange inspired for church girls who've considered tithing to the beauty supply store when Sunday morning isn't enough. And then, your structure is really neat because it's structured around sections like skincare and bronzer and contour and concealer. Can you talk a little bit about like what inspired that, sort of the beauty, the melding of beauty and religiousness and righteousness?
Yeah. So I was in seminary at the same time that I was honoring a commitment to my best friend. I had really like let myself go after a failed relationship attempt. And she came to visit me and she was just like, you gotta do better. Cause I don't know what this is, but this ain't my best friend. So you gotta do better. And she made me promise that every day I would make my face, put on clothes, and at least try to look presentable. So at the same time that I was in seminary, learning about breaking down theology, learning about the different, theological concepts of atonement and salvation and grace, I'm piecing myself back together through beauty participation, through beauty industry participation, and through makeup. And I also had this moment where that's how I understood it. And I was making my face, going through these rituals. And my friend told me, she was like, you should make your beauty routine and your beauty regimen a sacred ritual to you. Like it is what helped you piece yourself back together. And that's what I did. Like I still do it. Like when I'm putting on blush, when I'm putting on browns, or like help me to show up in the world. Like when I'm putting on eyeliner and eye makeup, sometimes I'll be like, help me to see what I need to see in certain situations and allow myself to allow my vision to be productive today. And so I wanted an opportunity to bring to bear that part of me, because that was that was true and authentic to my journey in seminary. And then at the same time, I am big on the fact that I believe that women should be able to write and own their own faith journeys. And I wanted to have faith conversations that did not center cishet Black men. Like, I wanted you to get that book and be like, oh, this ain't even for me. Like, I wanted women, particularly Black women, to know we can have conversations about God and about faith that don't have to wait for the permission of men to curate them, that we can do that. And so for me, I was like, the way that it worked for me was through beauty. And how can I have these conversations right now in an authentic way that doesn't include that? So I mean, it was so funny because when we were going through, I was like, I wonder how this is gonna work. And I had this really, I mean, she's amazing. My editor, Portia Burke, she was like, no, like, this works. Like, I remember being nervous, thinking that it wasn't gonna work. And she was like, no, this works. And I remember fighting. Everybody loves the subtitle, but I remember having to stand very firm and say, like, no, I remember there was a conversation about the word tithing. And I was like, and they were like, well, you know, everybody may not know tithing in the context of, you know, faith tradition. I was like, well, Black women do. And then it was the part about like beauty supply store. They're like, why not, you know, beauty counter? I was like, we don't call it a beauty counter. We go to the beauty supply store. Like, you know, there were ways. And I'm really glad that when I fought for that subtitle, one, because For Color Girls is so important to my life. You know, like, there are sometimes I gotta walk around and be like, somebody almost ran off with all my stuff. I have to, I gotta bring it. It is so dear to me. And I wanted the same way that For Color Girls has been a part of the transformation for so many of us. I just hoped that Red Lip Theology could also stand in that lineage. And I wanted it to. And I just wanted to always honor I don't do this by myself. I stand on broad shoulders, and believe that we gotta honor where we came from. And so that was a way that I felt like I could. And I was so grateful that I got to get it. and I stood, you know, my agent and Portia, I was like, I want that subtitle.
So kudos for you, one, for standing up for that title. And, you know, kudos to your editor and publisher, you know, editors and publishers who are brave enough to allow their Black women writers. You know, I had the pleasure of having a conversation with Disha Filia, who is brilliant. And we talked about writing from the Black femme gaze, writing in a way where the only gaze is ours. And I think your book, Red Lip Theology, will be alongside For Color Girls, because you can tell when you're reading this that it is written for us. It is our language, which does not mean that other people can't learn and breathe from it, but it is our language, and you will come into our space and you will get to know us.
Right. Like I'm glad you said that, because I'm grateful for Convergent, and I'm grateful for the folks at Convergent and Penguin Random House, because they got me. And one of the things that was really, really scary is that, first of all, when you're a Black woman and you're writing about faith, it's not that many of us in this space already, right? But then when you're writing about faith in a very different, when you're writing about it left of center and not right of center, like there are very few people who are willing to, you know, to take a chance on you. And I remember going into that meeting and was just like, oh God, I hope these white people like me. Like I remember feeling that way. And like, I really hope that, you know, they give me, I hope that they can see my heart. And because, you know, and I talk about it in the book, I take a lot of hits, and have taken a lot of hits for the way that I write, and for the things that I say, and for the stances that I take. And when I walked in that meeting, it was love and it was support, and I think that it also models what it means for those who have power and those who have access and privilege to create the space that for those of us who have the voice and who have the opportunity to get them. And so, yeah, I'm like, I tell them all the time, I ain't trying to go nowhere else. So hopefully we do what we need to do with this one so I don't have to. But I'm really grateful that they gave me the opportunity.
Well, I suspect what they also saw is your authenticity. And it is your authenticity that is going to speak to other Black women. And so often Black women are encouraged, especially in the Black church, to leave their authenticity behind in favor of respectability, or what we're told is respectability. And you talk very well about, you have a great chapter about sex. And no, I didn't just skip to that chapter. But someone asked, Natalie Brown asked, she said, I once heard the producer Dream Hampton say, everything I learned about bitches and hoes, I learned from Genesis. And that resonates. Would you talk about what the Black church teaches women about our value and worth?
Well, one, hey Natalie, I miss you. But it teaches us that our worth is tied to what we do, right? That like we have to work in the church. We have to work to be worthy, right? Which is why too often women who, especially single women who desire partnership, in order for them to think that they are ready for to get ready, they gotta fast. They gotta go to all of these, women's conferences. They gotta spend more time working in the church in order for God to like. I had to tell my homegirl one time. I was like, I don't like you spend every day in church. That Negro ain't in there. like you need to go to some parties, go to some other stuff. He ain't at the church. Like he not there. You keep going.
Elsewhere.
You ain't seen him. And don't nobody want Boaz because he died right after he got married, So it's like we have to be really honest about the truth that we've been taught, that in order to be worthy, we've got to work toward it, right? That like in order to have a certain level of value, like even, I mean, I talk about it. It's funny that you talk about that chapter, but I talk about it in another chapter where I talk about, Adam and Eve. But even in that space, you got where they both did something wrong, quote unquote. And Adam is like, well, this chick you gave me is the one that I wouldn't have done it had she not done it. You know what I'm saying? Like, so the downfall and we get the outcome is that the consequences of the garden are that, women have to travail in birth, right? That I mean, the scripture says it. And all men have to do is labor and sweat by their brow. So like women have to almost die in order to get a baby, when as a consequence of the fall, and all men have to do is work hard. You know what I'm saying? Like, so again, it's this attitude that we are not at all worthy unless we make ourselves worthy. And even then with Black women, the goalpost continues to move, right? So it's like you can do all of the right things. You can go to church. You can be chaste. You can have all of the degrees. You can tithe. Ooh, but you're not married. And ooh, you ain't got no babies.
And if you make a choice to get married so people stop talking about you not being married and he turns out to be kind of ain't shit, then that's your fault for not.
That was your fault because you didn't wait for the right one.
Well, exactly.
And don't let them kids be bad, because then if they're bad, it's because you haven't spent enough time with them. So the goalpost continues to move. And then we internalize that. We internalize the shame. We internalize the guilt, and the times that we may make a wrong decision, the times we may make a wrong move, the times we do something that people thought we should have done differently, we beat ourselves up so bad because we think, dang, I should have never done that. I know better. I knew better. And it's all because we've been told and sold this bill of goods that says we haven't worked hard enough to embody the grace that God already gave us.
So, I mean, this makes me think. So, a few months ago, I was I asked to interview women about the ways that negative stereotypes of Black women had been reinforced throughout their life and their youth. And when I sent out that call, my inbox was flooded. My Twitter was flooded with, let me tell you about my experience in the Black church.
Mm-hmm.
And it would almost, so can the Black church be redeemed as a whole for Black women? Because it made me think, is misogyny a feature or a bug of the church? And is there a way that there can be a wholesale cultural shift apart from us individually finding our own theology?
So I'm gonna say no. And I'm gonna be real. Like I know that when I say this, I'm talking specifically about institutions, right? That like the institutional Black church is grounded in the subjugation of women, right? So in order for the church to revolutionize itself, it has to think differently about women, fundamentally different about women. It has to think fundamentally differently about queer people. And it has to move from a space that does not centralize power in patriarchy and Black male heteronormativity, even if it's not even if it's not just presented in Black men, because Black women can carry the water of patriarchy in the Black church too, right? So I say all the time, yeah, you'll have these pockets of spaces where things are being transformed and transformational, and pastors are really trying to work through stuff. And then you also see how polity, pushes them right a little bit back to where they were. And so I say that as somebody I joined a church last year, right? Like I believe that the church is essential to me, right? It's holy to me. My mama felt me kicking a church in her belly. Like it's never not gonna be holy for me, right? That was my mama and my grandmother have given their lives to that space. The work that my mama, the work that my grandma, the work that my aunts did, that makes the space holy to me, and I have a right to be in it. At the same time, it's not the totality of where I find my spiritual grounding and my spiritual formation. And I think I represent and I'm a part of a community of women and of sisters who recognize that. And it doesn't make us any less faithful. The way I engage with church is very different. I love church. I'm not gonna give it what my grandma did. I'm not gonna give it what my mama did. it's gonna get what I give it. And I'm okay with that, right? And it doesn't make me any less saved. It doesn't make me any less holy. It makes me have a bit of more common sense concerning me, because I can't give consistently, and I can't support places that don't fully believe in my thriving. That don't. I had to, before I joined the church, I had a whole conversation with the pastor. Like I went church shopping, right? And I still know that there are sometimes that the church where I am will be disappointing. Like I have, prepared myself for that. But I also recognize that the ways that it used to be the end all be all for how I understand and I know God, it's not that for me anymore. And maybe it should have never been. Like, I talk about that in the book. I think, I was the girl that my mama would make me write my questions down on for before I could ask them at Bible study. Cause she's like, you're not gonna be sitting up here asking these crazy questions. Because I was just telling somebody the other day, I remember a time where we were in Bible study and we were over the passage where it was like, I'm the way, the truth, and the life, right? No man come to the Father except by me. And I was a kid, I was like in middle school. I was like, that don't make sense. And my mom was like, what do you mean that doesn't make sense? I said, Jesus can't be the only way to God. Why can't he be? I was like, well, didn't he tell Hagar that he was gonna make a great nation out of her child too? So if Jesus is the only way to God, and Hagar's baby isn't in Jesus's lineage, then that would make God a lie. And my mama was like, don't say that in that church. Be quiet. And I remember that moment, because I was like, it doesn't, like a lot of these things don't make sense. So I don't know if I ever was supposed to be one of those that made it the totality of spiritual formation for me. But I'm glad that I see now, and I've seen that it doesn't have to be. And I'm glad I'm at a place where I am able to honor and embrace the church for what it means to me historically and contemporarily. But it doesn't have to be all, because it's not for me. And that doesn't mean I'm not that is all for other sisters, but it's just not for me. Yeah.
But I wonder what that teaches Black women about relationships in general, and especially heterosexual relationships, that you're taught from a very young age to give everything to an institution that doesn't love you back, and that in many ways disrespects you and, is patriarchal, but you are supposed to continue to give everything. Tony McNeil wants to know what, because the Black church is patriarchal, should Black men take away from this book?
Oh, wow. One, that y'all are trifling. I think that's clear when you read Red Lip Theology. Two, I think that it matters for Black men to be self-reflective. It matters for them to accept accountability when where they have not. And it matters for them to actively and consistently work to decenter Black male voices in faith spaces, cis-het Black male voices in faith spaces. There are times I'm honestly tired of listening to men, like straight Black men, preach about God. Like, I mean, it just, case in point, over Christmas, I hate when when we're talking about the birth, when it's time to preach about the birth in Advent, when it's time to preach about the birth of Jesus, and Mother's Day. And over Christmas, I heard a sermon from a pastor that says, you know that you're walking in purpose, using Mary, the Magnificat, you know when you're walking in purpose when you have Jesus inside of you. And it talked about all of these notions about being pregnant with purpose and delivering this baby and how you move with Jesus inside of you. And I was just like, first of all, this is really lazy. We never hear weak faith referred to as impotent faith. We never hear erectile dysfunction sermons. Like, we never hear, those, but we always hear about miscarrying purpose, not carrying a vision or something to term, what it means to be pregnant with purpose, right? Like, I don't think too often men think about who's listening to their sermons, what it means to be on the receiving end of them. I think too often it's expected that we are to, that they, because they are men, have the right to direct and to dictate who God is and who God shows up to be. And so I hope that when they read this book, they recognize that that there are different ways to encounter God and have conversations about God that don't have to center them, and they should create more room to back themselves up so that others can really have the opportunity to speak, so that others can get free.
So look, you all, like, I'm not going to even be able to answer all my and your questions before we are done. We only have an hour. So what you need to do is hit that button down there and buy the book so you can immerse yourself in this goodness, and go to CandiceBenbow.com, where I'm sure you will find a list of other places where Candice will be talking about this book. But so I wonder, like, how can you tell us how Black women can start defining their own theology as you have? And also, where do you get your red lip theology? Like, who are some theologians, who are some pastors, who are some, writers that you think they're doing it right and I get nourished by this?
Yeah, so I think the first thing that they have to do is really sit with who they know God to be for themselves. There was a moment where I wrote down everything I knew to be true about God, not what I thought I knew through my mother or what I knew through my grandmother, but what I knew to be true about God. They get to sit with the questions that they have and realize that God is big enough for those questions. And I think ultimately it's the space of asking questions and then sitting and being like, these things don't make sense. Like, when we actually sit with a lot of what we've been taught or what we're supposed to believe, it doesn't always reconcile with what makes sense, right? And it's okay that it doesn't. Like, it matters for you to honor the relationship that you have with God yourself, right? That, like, God ain't, one of the things I had to learn very quickly is that God is not going to talk to someone else about me more than God's going to talk to me, right? Like, if we say that as Christians, that one of the things that happened when Christ came and through Christ is that this mediator that is no longer necessary, then that means, like, I can trust the relationship that I have with God for myself and with myself. And then challenge who you're reading. Like, I'm gonna tell you, there was a book, and I got a master's in sociology first. Marla Fredericks wrote this book, Between Sundays, that really pushed me to think very differently about how Black women engage in church. That book for me put me on a different path. But there are folks like, I mean, I call them the OGs. You had Dolores Williams, Renita Weems. I grew up in a house where my mama was going to church, had Renita Weems's books. And when Renita Weems was writing for Essence, she also would tear out her columns and her articles, and Susan L. Taylor's letter to the editorial note that she would write. She would have those, and those would be in her purse. Those would be in on her nightstand. She would read those. And so I grew up in a house where even when my mama went to church, she still listened to Black women who she trusted. Katie Cannon, who recently passed, I think it was like 2 years ago, that she passed. Currently, Monica Coleman, whose book Bipolar Faith really opened up a way for us to talk about Black women and mental health and faith. She wrote this essay, an article that I read when I was in seminary called Must I Be Womanist? And it really broke down like, do I really got to do this the way y'all been doing it? And I was like, yes, that's it. Monique Moultrie, who has a book about sex and faith and the messages that we get. LaVon Briggs, Nicole Simmons. You got Melva Sampson, Shaniqua Walker Barnes's book that has Too Heavy a Yoke. I'm gonna tell you this. I have not seen Black women embrace a book in church like a lot of them embraced Too Heavy a Yoke, because it gave them permission to say that strong Black woman narrative is killing me and I want to do something different. And I remember feeling like, okay, I hadn't even started writing Red Lip Theology. And I was like, if I can do that kind of work for sisters that like they texting each other, like, did you read page 46? When she said, I was like, I've done, what I need to do. So like, those for me are some of the Black women on the academic side. When you got Pink Robe Chronicles by which is this online faith community by Melva Sampson. There are preachers like Courtney Clayton Jenkins that I think, she's in Illinois. I think she's one of the greatest preachers of my generation. And I watch her and I'm just in awe of the fact that the reason why she is not known more is because she's a woman and she's a Black woman, right? Like, so I said all that to say, and I know I was name dropping a lot of people that many people didn't catch, but I said all that to say is that it matters to look for Black women and people who look like you to be able to help you chart your faith journey. Like the moment that I heard from people more who were not Black men, and I was beginning to read more people who weren't Black men, was the moment I began to ask a different set of questions. And I began to shift differently. So I think that's how you create what Red Lip Theology looks like for you in your life, and gives you room to really find a way to thrive and live into it.
So everyone, it looks like Auburn Avenue is capturing links to some of those books in the chat.
Oh, good.
After this is over, the video will be available. So you can always come back and hear all of this goodness all over again. Ebony Chappelle, who is a really awesome writer from Indianapolis, wants to know, have any churches called on you to come and get them together? in terms of their treatment of Black women?
Yeah, I've done a lot of consulting for churches. I love when pastors call me. So what's funny is, it's frustrating because a lot of pastors will say to me privately, like, I agree with you, I just can't say that publicly. And I'm like, no, yes, you can. Like the assumption that the church and the congregation isn't ready for you or for that kind of truth is just not, like, we having these conversations. Y'all just are the ones that's scared, right? And so I've been invited to several churches to sit with pastors and think through sermons and think through ministry. And like, I've heard some sermons and been like, okay, so if you just, I'll never forget, most recently, I walked through a sermon on Zoom with a pastor and I said, you just left the doctor and the doctor told you that you're perimenopausal and your chance of having children, of birthing your own children, something that you dreamed about, has been taken away from you. Now preach that sermon. How does that sermon sound now? It's like, exactly, right? And so it's, for me, those kind of moments, like I find a lot of joy and I take a lot of joy in those because I want pastors to think differently about their sermons. I want them to think differently about what ministry looks like. And so I'm grateful that, through it all, there are pastors who are like, yeah, like come help, come get me together. And I'm not as PG sometimes as I need to be. I'm like, what did you thought that worked? Like, those kind of conversations. But yeah, they do call me. They do.
So we are nearing the end, and we're going to end with a surprise red lip speed round. But first, I want to ask this question that Kennedy Mallory asked, and I think it's important because I think a lot of people probably have this question. How do you reconcile the boundaries that you've set between yourself and the church with the idea that we are supposed to mirror Jesus's complete sacrifice?
Because I'm not Jesus.
Okay.
Like that for me is it. Yeah. That like, I'm not Jesus. And that also Jesus did have boundaries. And we don't talk enough about that. And that we are not supposed to, we are supposed to be Christ-like, but we are not him. And the moment that I said, I am not Jesus, I'm not here to save the world, and I can't redeem the world, but I can just do what is in this patch for me and my little hands. It freed me up, to do a lot differently and to see a lot differently. And I hope through this book, the biggest thing I hope that sisters take from that is that, that like we're human. God called us to be human. I think that's that recurs almost through every single chapter, is that like we need to start reclaiming our humanity, and within our humanity has to have boundaries and has to have limitations, and we need to embrace that.
So, you ready?
No.
Red lip round. All right. First question: gospel song that makes you shout.
Never would have made it.
Never would have made it. All right. One gotta go. Lashes, lipstick, nails, hair, or heels. One gotta go.
Heels.
All right. Heels got to go. Favorite good sis from the good book.
Rahab.
All right. Choose one: early service, 11 a.m. service, or evening hour of power.
I'm going to 11 because I'm not getting up early and I got other stuff to do. So I'm going to.
Beauty ritual that always cheers you up.
Saturday morning skincare. My skincare routine.
Ooh, and you need to email me that because your skin is flawless.
And I'm having an acne breakout right now, but honey, you can't. I am not looking like what I've been through because I got a facial skin. You hear me? You hear me? Yes.
Most sinful song I'm bumping right now.
Ooh, there is this song. It's old, but with your permission, it's called "Permission" by Ro James. Honey,
Oh, okay.
it stays in rotation.
Somebody write that down.
Yeah, it stays in rotation.
Last question, fellow church girls, I need you to know what's your message
That
for your fellow
that you are enough, that you are worthy of every good thing, and that every dream, every desire that you have for your life is possible, and that God wants you happy and thriving, and that it's up to us also to want to see ourselves happy and thriving too. And it's possible. It's possible to be whole. It's possible to be healed. It is possible.
Yes, you are wonderful. You are all right. Thank you, my friend. You are awesome. Buy Candice's book, and while you're in there, you can buy mine too.
Yes,
and
that book.
And
both of them.
You can come back.
Oh, this is so fun.
Thank you both so much. This is a beautiful conversation. Thank you to everybody watching at home and to our friends at the Auburn Avenue Research Library. I want to let folks know, because I saw lots of love for Dr. Shaniqua Walker-Barnes, that Dr. Walker-Barnes will be at Charis in this virtual space with us 1 week from tonight, celebrating.
I didn't know that. Yay!
Yes. So come back. She will be in conversation with Dr. Regime M. Jean-Charles, celebrating Dr. Jean-Charles's new book, Martin Luther King and the Trumpet of Conscience Today, which is very much about many of the conversation that came up tonight about what is the church's role in stopping, sexual violence, misogynistic behavior, et cetera, et cetera. So I hope folks will join us for that. And I hope if you enjoyed tonight, you'll check out our whole calendar of events. All of our events are posted online at charisbooksandmore.com. So Tamara's books, yes, are available from Charis. We love both of them. We hope that you will check those out. And then we hope that you will click this teal button to buy Red Lip Theology directly from Charis. It really does help us when you buy the books from us. Helps us get to do programs like this. We do have book plates, which are autographs that we're going to put in your book and send it out. They just arrived today. So we'll be putting them in all of the books. And finally, I hope that you all stay safe and well. You can revisit this page anytime. It will stay up. All the links will stay up. But if we can, we might try and send some of the info out when we let you know that the YouTube video is also up. So since I heard a request for that, we will try to do that as well. So thank you both so much. Candice, congratulations on your great success. Tamara,
thank you
as always, for being a great friend to Charis and to books in general. Y'all take care and stay safe and well.
Okay.